We now turn to look at Kant's three postulates of morality. Now, as Kant sees it, there are three ideas that are unprovable, and hence cannot be the objects of knowledge, but they are irresistible to us because they are the foundation of all morality, or so he claims, and these are the famous freedom, immortality, and God. Now, in the case of freedom, he claims that we must accept human freedom in order for morality to make sense. Now, by freedom, he doesn't mean like being free in the political sense. He means metaphysical freedom, having free will. Now, he notes that we cannot observe freedom in this sense scientifically. Kant accepted the Newtonian view of physics, basically that all events are determined by natural causes, and presumably human behavior would also be analyzable in psychological and physiological terms. So, the basic idea is that, as far as we can observe empirically, the scientific view is that we are determined. But this creates a problem for morality. The idea basically is this. If something is something that I ought to do, this would imply that presumably it is something that I can do, that ethics requires freedom. So, only free agents can meet this requirement of morality. So for Kant, there must be a metaphysical self beyond the empirical self. It's something we can't prove, so we have to accept, according to Kant, that even though we can't prove people are free, we have to accept freedom as a practical necessity for morality. And why must we accept this? Well, according to Kant, our life would be meaningless without morality. So, we must regard ourselves as free. So, roughly put, we've got to accept freedom because freedom is required for morality, and we really, really want morality. Secondly, according to Kant, we have to accept immortality. Why? Well, if you recall back to the ancient days at the start of this section, I noted that one condition on a moral theory is that it's got to be practical. That is to say, that the typical person has to live up to its requirements. Now, Kant claims the moral law is quite strict. We're obligated to make our will conform perfectly with duty. As you might imagine, achieving this perfection would be difficult. Not surprisingly, it would be impossible during a single lifetime. So rather than saying, well, I guess my theory expects too much, Kant takes the less obvious approach, which is this, to claim that immortality is a practical necessity, that we require endless time to achieve this perfect conformity of the will to duty. And so, he infers that since morality requires perfect conformity to duty, and morality can't be, too difficult, we've got to be immortal, because practice over infinity will presumably make perfect. Third and finally, there is God. Now, Kant, as I noted before, has kind of an interesting view of God and his connection to ethics. So Kant does not accept divine command theory because he doesn't claim that things are good because God says so. His view is that morality is independent for God. Now, he also notes that, going back to the matter of motives, he claims the hope for an eternal life, or the desire to avoid eternal punishment, cannot be the proper motive for doing what is right. Why? Well, for Kant, if someone is motivated to do something because they want to get eternal life, heaven, or to avoid eternal toastiness, that is to say, hell, they're not doing good out of duty. They're not doing it because it's the right thing. They're doing it based on a calculation of interest. So for Kant, it can't be the motivating factor. But, and here's where God comes into play, according to Kant, we intuitively want moral goodness to be linked to happiness. We want the righteous to be happy and the wicked to be sad. Now, in experience, of course, we don't see this connection. We don't find that the good are always happy and the wicked are always sad. So for this intuition to make sense, this intuition for justice, there must be, according to Kant, a transcendent cause bringing about a just future distribution of happiness. That is to say, that God will sort all these things out. So, he infers it is morally necessary to assume the existence of God. So even though he takes morality to be independent of God's will, he claims that morality naturally leads to religion. So Kant's view, to recap very quickly, essentially is this. In order to have morality, we've got to have freedom, immortality, and God. We really, really want morality, so we got to accept those three things. And next we'll turn to looking at some problems with deontology and Kant's theory.